So after he sees Toya, basically Dabi, having Toya's hair, he goes, I need the perfect scream. There we go. In Class 1A, here's this. In Class 1A and 1B, they say, what the hell? No one ever screams like that. So Todoroki, Bakugo, Deku, who's beaten down and bruised, Uraraka and Tsuyu rush over and they say, what happened? And they see him with a villain with him blood on his hands. Todoroki doesn't know who this is. I'm gonna say the Christian was born a couple of days before Todoroki, after Todoroki, so he at least knows Toya a tiny bit. Well, he knows Toya a lot more. He gets recognized. And then he recognizes him, and he doesn't recognize him, so yeah. He says, what happened? Bakugo yells, was you the one that screamed? With tears streaming down his face, he nods his head. He says, what the hell? You killed the villain? So what? He says, he's not dead, but it's worse. Christian puts his hand on his head and says, what are you doing? Then pushes his hand back. Then red hair. Todoroki says, Toya? He says, is he dead? Christian reads his pulse saying, he's not dead. He says, how'd you know? He says, he has black hair for some reason. No, he doesn't say that yet. He says, why would you attack him? He says, I didn't know it was him. He had black hair. It was all dye. How was I supposed to know it was him? But then he wakes up and then he shoots fire at him going, ugh. He says, what is your what's your name? He says, Dabi. He says, yeah, right, Toya. He goes, how do you know my name? He says, your hair. He goes, you took out the dye. You burn. He will not go back with them. Oh, look, pretend like he never took out the hair dye. I don't want that. I want it to be later on. When Christian is fighting him, he goes, bam, and punches him right in the throat. He goes, oh. But Christian does steal back. Just trying to steal back the ice thing, but he's holding it back. Christian shoots a frost breath, going. Dabi would block this, but then his arm gets frozen, kind of like Vegeta did in the Tournament of Power. He goes, dun. He burns this, of course. Christian says, only one person can burn that, but whatever. He says, blizzard! And with an orb in his hand, launches a blizzard. Going, brrr. He goes, Dabi tries to counter with his fire, but it doesn't do anything. Then Christian shoots ice spikes, which cut up Dabi. Goes, then Toga goes for stab. He grabs her arm and then slams her, but that doesn't end well, because then he gets stabbed in the chest going, he goes, I need that video of anime characters spitting out blood. This is Bakugo's voice, pretend like it's Christian. He goes, and then falls to the ground, going. Then he's blasted with flames, going, and he's engulfed by them. He's burnt to a crisp. Todoroki gets enraged, and then fire and ice appear around him, going. He goes, ah, shooting a humongous wave of fire, which is way bigger than Dobby's strongest. He goes, ah, trying to counter it, but his is instantly extinguished. Toga jumps in the way and throws a knife through it, which cuts through the fire and stabs Todoroki, but not too much, and just cuts him. Christian tries to regen himself with his ice, going. He's not burnt to Chris, like he's burnt. So, but if he puts a little bit of ice, if he puts ice on it, then he goes and says, he somehow gets up being burnt. He goes, "How are you still up?" He creates a ginormous ice orb and puts him in. He goes, ah, freezing himself, going. As he's being frozen. But then Dobby kicks them all back, and then the whole league comes and then bodies all of them. Then they grab the iceberg, kind of, and then put him in it. He says, "Why is he in an iceberg?" He says, "He froze himself so he couldn't get to him, and this ice is unbreakable." He says, "Let me try and decay the ice." He tries it, but it doesn't work. He says, "This ice is strong." He says, "Use your strongest flame." He goes, and it's melting it a tiny bit. They see the slightest drop falling down. Then he says, "Dobby." Koga says, "Dobby, would you mind pulling up your sleeve, please?" He says, "Fine." Pulls up his sleeve and sees the bracelet. He says, "What is that?" He says, "Nothing." He says, "You're gonna tell us what that is." And he puts 4 fingers to his throat. He says, "Fine, it's a gift from my younger brother that he gave me." He goes, "What's his name?" He says, "I don't have to tell you that." Then he puts a blast to his face, and if Shigaraki even decays him, he'll blast his head off. Shigaraki puts away his hand, and so is Dobby, but then Shigaraki goes back and Dobby kicks him, saying, "Get back, now!" Then the ice starts to crack, and Christian's back to normal. But then he gets knocked out instantly and tied and chained up. He says, "What do you want from me?" He says, "We want you to join. We saw your performance in the sports festival." He says, "I'm not interested in you, I'm interested in him." He says, "Why are you so interested in Dobby?" He says, "Because he has my older brother's bracelet." He smirks and says, laughing maniacally. Then the whole league starts to laugh, except for and also not Dobby. They go, "Ah, your older brother gave you this? Gave you that? You gave that to your older brother? Well, apparently Dobby's little brother gave it to him." He says, "I bet you didn't even make that. You're too weak. I don't even know why we asked you to join the league." Christian goes. They say, "You're gonna join or we're gonna hurt your friends." He goes and says, he says, "You're gonna die now." He says, "See, that's a perfect villain laugh." He says, "You're gonna join." He said, then he smiles again, going. Then steam blows from his nose, you know, like thing. He goes and goes, Dobby's even, all of them are scared. They're like, "Jeez, that's a freaking scary ass laugh." He says, "Now you'll let me go, or I'll give you all frostbite." But then, out of nowhere, they hear Detroit. But then they're also watching TV on how Yue is apologizing. Christian goes, "No, no, 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 no." Then his eyes start to glow, and he says, "Dobby, what is wrong with him?" Then both of his hands turn to ice, and then he crushes it. He crushes the bars. Actually, no, he doesn't. Then they watch this, they're laughing. Then they untrain him, seeing if he wants to. Then he goes and says, "I'd like to say something before I join." He says, say it away. He says, he gets ready and says, he said, he says, Ergomoji. He says, Shigaraki goes, Christian goes, beating the crap out of the entire league going. And he just destroys them, and then he tries to tie them up with rope, but there's no rope. Then they get back up and tie it, and then he gets punched into a wall. He says, you may be strong because you got us by surprise, but don't worry, kid. You're so weak. You'll never surpass anyone here. Got that? While holding him up with 4 fingers. He says, I think I might just end you. Then he throws him against the other wall. He goes, then he's sitting down. He's knocked out, and then they get a knock saying pizza delivery. Then they hear. Then Dobby goes for the door, but then all they hear is Detroit Smash. They hear smash, and then the thing crushes. Well, the paper dude comes in. He says, what have they done to him? He said, then All Might flicks him in the head since that's like a slap to him. He goes, wake up, kid, wake up. He goes, then Christian runs out, gliding out, going, then the whole league follows him going, but then they're taken to that place where All For One is. He said, All Might has an explosive rematch with All For One, while Christian's having an explosive match with the League of Villains. Then, when it starts, Christian says, I think it's time I go all out. He says, oh really? He puts on his gloves and puts them on going, phew. He says, what are your gloves gonna do? But then out of nowhere, a little blade comes on top of both gloves. He goes, Then he rushes at them going, Autotron. I have, Then he says, disrespectful and rude. He says, you've never seen me at my full power, so I'll show you. He goes, ah! Hold on, let me get Goku up going Super Saiyan 3 for this. I love this. He goes,
last week, this guy never stole this package off my porch. Because this doorbell can't...
He goes, he says, trust me, you're going to love this. Trust me.
What you're seeing now
is
my normal state.
This is an ice ascendant. This is an ice wielder. He says,
and this
is a level
is what is known as a Super Saiyan that is ascended
past an ice wielder. But you could just call this
You can just call this a Super
Ice
Saiyan
Saiyan 2 and Ice Wielder 2. He goes. Then he goes.
What would that make him?
Even further beyond. Then the whole ground starts to shake from where he is, and how this is being recorded, they see he goes.
No, stop it!
Go, go. Eraser's saying this, by the way.
Drain away all the time you have left on Earth. And I say we never stop.
Pretend he doesn't say this. He goes. This is. That's Vlad.
Do it, Dad.
And pretend like no one said that.
Too much.
Pretend Natsu said that, said go brother instead. He goes and says, and never wants to rush over to go help, but he realizes what he's doing and says, good luck, son. Then he goes,
I'm gonna get yelled at again.
come on, keep on playing it. He goes,
Like the whole world is shaking apart.
he feels like he got white Super Saiyan 3 and his whole body is covered in icy aura. And he's got wings. He's got blue wings. He's got like ice wings. And he's got ice claws. He goes. Then he says. Then, after all that, he goes, this is my final form. He says, and they're shocked at the power. They're shocked. Then Deku, Ida, Todoroki, and Momo and Kirishima jump in to help him. And they don't think he's got it, and they know this intense power. Then Christian says, then they're really beating them up, actually fighting on equal terms. They're putting up really good power. So then Deku lands a punch on Shigaraki going. Then Momo disappears and doesn't disappear, just punches Toga in the face going. Okay, I don't think she'd ever say that. Then Christian puts ice to the ground, stabbing through, what's his name? Through the turtle dude, and then goes. Then Todoroki, shooting fire, goes. Okay, pretend like he said Deku Squad, we turn it up. Person says, finally, you guys give it a name. But then Deku, Momo, Kirishima, basically everyone besides Christian and Todoroki gets sent flying back. Christian's really beating up the people he's fighting. But then Endeavor says, there's no way I'm laying out on this. Endeavor jumps in to help fight the League. He goes, then they all bump fists in the middle, and then Christian says, look, I don't know what I'd do. Endeavor would never say this, alright? We all know that. Endeavor is a stubborn son of a bitch. And there he goes, apparently. Apparently this is what they do. Endeavor disappears with a fire blast right in front of Magda, the turtle dude, and the other dude, and Mr. Compressing goes, then Todoroki goes, then Christian goes for a blast and then goes for an ice beam saying, then Christian disappears and then beats the crap out of his side of the league going, Endeavor, then All Might smiles saying, so they finally made a bond to work together, huh? Then they're absolutely destroying. Natsuo says, I really want to go join them right now, so screw it, I'm pretty strong, I'm joining in. Fumie says, do you really want to do this? He goes, yep. He says, yep. Fumie says, well, if you're coming, I'm coming too. They rush over. I don't know what their quirks are. I'm gonna say he has some kind of cool ice quirk, and so does she. But she has some kind of healing quirk. Some ice healing quirk. Those two arrive saying, hey guys, what did we miss? He says, nothing. He says, they all put their fists in saying, Todoroki. Then Christian says, but then Natsuo says, Christian, what the hell happened to your hair? He goes, this is what I call it, Ice Form 3. I got ice claws, ice wings, long hair. Awesome. Then he disappears, grabbing Shigaraki saying, punching him in the stomach, going, boom! And then they start to body the League, going, Grrr. Remember, this would never happen. This is why it's a what if. This would never happen. The Todorokis would never work together. Because I don't even think Natsuo would fight. Natsu would fight. Huh? Are you RP? I don't know what that means. You might actually saying it. I don't understand. I'm saying that the Todoroki family would never work together in a fight. Unless it's like way in the future where Fumie and Natsu finally start fighting. Like, I don't think they actually have strong quirks. I'm gonna guess that Fumie has a good quirk. I mean, like a ice healing quirk. But then they're working together and then they finally defeat the League. He says, then they turn their attention to All for One, which is already... But then All Might's true form is shown. Christian says, I knew it. He says, you knew this entire time? He says, duh. Why do you think Cementos, during the USJ attack, blocked All Might? Obviously, it was because something All Might was hiding. Then Christian shoots a blast that shoots an ice ball that rains over him and says, All Might, get back! Then pushes him to the side when he shoots a big attack. When All for One shoots a big attack, he pushes him to the side, then says, Ice Beam! Then freezes that attack going, Then they're all trying to work together. Then Christian says, Blizzard! Creating a giant blizzard going, which hits All for One, freezing. Then Endeavor burns it going, I want to do a thing where all the Todorokis work together in a fight, but that's never going to happen. Because Rei isn't a fighter. Neither is Fumie or Natsuo. I don't know his name. Is it Natu or Natsuo? So then he punches him in the face. Christian punches All for One in the face, breaking his mask full on. All Might smiles and goes into his true form again, saying, United States of Smash! and defeats All For One. Then he says, now it's your turn to Deku. Then he runs over, then he walks over to Endeavor and his family and says, you guys really are working together. He says, don't say that, All Might. Yes, what? I'm just exposing the truth. Y'all work together really good. He says, thank you. Christian says, thanks. He says, we don't need your pity, All Might. Christian says, really? This is a fun match. He says, wait, you thought this was fun? He goes, I have fun with any fight. If it was a fight for my death, I'd still have fun. He says, you are one crazy child. He goes, exactly. Now back to the UA thing. They'd give them dorms. Christian says, alright. So then when they were about to go to bed, Christian is starting to get angry because he hears crying in the living room. He says, is that Ojako, Momo, Mina, and all them, and everybody out there crying because they're watching a sad movie? Just tell me what you need. Goodbye. He says, then he listens more intently and says, that's a baby crying. He says, what the heck's a baby doing in UA? Here. Then he opens the door and says, guys, is anyone watching a movie? They all open their door saying, no, why? He says, then they realize saying, what is that? Bakugo yells, what is that crying? Christian walks in there and says, guys, Midoriya, did you turn into a baby? Deku opens his door saying, I'm here. Christian says, excuse me, what? Then he tries to touch it, but then he hears growling. He goes, ah! He says, what the hell? And it's got a tail, cat ears, pink cat ears, and pink tail. He says, and it's wearing a pink maid outfit, and a pink dress. He says, what the hell? And he's got smooth green hair, but just kind of weird. He says, I'm sorry, what? Then he looks at him and he says, Senpai. And he says, what the hell? And he goes to try and kiss him, and he slaps him in the face, saying, well, actually, no, he just grabs him by the throat, because he's tiny. He's like the size of a chipmunk. So then he grabs him, saying, what the hell? What is this thing doing here? He says, and tries to bite him. He says, bro, you bite me, and I will kill you. He goes, oh, he's not as small as a chipmunk. He's got a size. He's about the size to my knee in real life, which is not that big. He's about 2'2". He says, what the heck? He says, what the hell is this thing doing in here? He says, what's your name, kid? He says, I am 16 and my name is Izuku Midoriya. Christian says, then Christian looks at him. Everyone looks at him with a confused look. Christian says, he takes a deep breath, saying, he says, annoyed, saying,
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
then walks back, saying,
Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks, don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
he says, then he goes to his room. Then the soft Deku looks at Todoroki saying, Todoroki senpai. Then he sees Momo Yaoyorozu next to her and she says, get away from my boyfriend, you bitht. Then Todoroki punts him for a field goal, saying, "Don't touch my friends." He goes, Bakugo says, "What? Which one of you extras brought a baby in the house?" He says, "Kacchan, help! They're bullying me." He goes, Kacchan says, Bakugo says, "Peace out, Goose. I'm too old. I'm too tired to deal with this." Christian opens his door saying, "Thank you, Bakugo. That's exactly what I said. I'm not dealing with that thing." He goes, "Why does nobody like me?" He says, don't cry. We could be your friends." He says, "Shut up, brat." Then punches her with a soft punch. Deku just says, "Detroit Smash!" and punches him so hard that he sends him through the dorm. And Momo goes up and picks him up, saying, "Are you okay, little guy?" He says, "Ah," and tries to bite her. Then she throws him in there. Then he hears all kinds of arguing going. Here's arguing and yelling and crying. Christian can't sleep. Then Christian gets so mad to the point where he kicks down the door and says, "Shut up! Shut up!" Then he pulls out a gun and says, You all better shut the fuck up, or I will shoot every single one of you! Shut up!" He goes, the soft Deku says, "That's fake!" and jumps up in there and he shoots him in the ear. He goes, he shoots one of his cat ears. He goes, he says, "Was that real?" "Yes, it was. Now shut the hell up or I will physically shoot you all." Then when everyone goes back to their rooms and they get in, soft Deku sleeps on the couch, he says, and when everyone's asleep, he says, I'm too hot to sleep here. I'm gonna go sleep with someone else, with one of the boys. Christian thinks, I hope that kid never comes in here. I will flip and rip his head off. Then a crack in his door appears and someone walks through. He doesn't know who it is and he's not even paying attention. He's sleeping. But then in the morning, he feels something curl up. He says, probably the dog. He thinks it's probably the dog. But then he feels a cat tail on him. He goes, "What the hell? I don't have a cat." Then when it reaches 7 a.m., he yells, "Ah!" Everyone runs in his room saying, "Are you okay?" He says, "What the hell are you doing in here?" Then kicks him into a wall. He goes, he says, "Get the hell out of here!" Then he pulls out a knife and is about to cut his head off, but my character, puts his hand out and breaks the knife, saying, "Stop it. I didn't want him to do that either. That was very disgusting, but you can't kill him. He's stuck here for 24 hours. Got it?" He says, "Why should I listen to you?" Then goes to punch him. He blocks a fish and shockwaves him back into his bed. He goes, "Damn you!" Bakugo tries to attack him and he just phases through. He goes, "What the?" He says, "Anime power." And then he goes, "Super Saiyan." He says, "Ultra Instinct." And then one-shots Bakugo and then one-shots everyone there. And says, "Now don't test me. I have all of your powers. I have every power in the universe. I have every power in the multiverse. I can literally erase this world right now." He says, "Erase something in my bed." He says, "I'll erase your dog." He says, "Don't you fucking dare. I will eliminate you." He says, "Fine." He eliminates his pencil with a snap. He goes, "Okay, I believe you now." Then they go to school with that stupid Deku sitting down. Then he passes a letter to Todoroki and he says, "What the?" He says, "Todoroki, mind reading what you have?" He says, "Deku wrote it to me." He says, "Midoriya." He says, he's talking to normal Deku because normal Deku didn't send it though. He says, "Why were you sending Todoroki notes?" He says, "I didn't do it, he did." He says, "That's Midoriya as well." He says, "His name is apparently Izuku Midoriya as well, and he sent a love letter to him because he's weird." He says, Christian says, "One more word out of any of you and I will get that creator to give me his Hakai powers and I will Hakai you all. Shut up!" Then he goes back to sleep going, But then he feels something rubbing on his head, and everyone is disgusted by it that they don't even want to see it. They're just not even doing anything about it. Christian looks and says, he yells so loudly that it bursts the little Deku's eardrums. He goes, "Ah!" This is the weirdest thing I've ever said in my life, but this is what I think a soft Deku would do. He's twerking in front of him, and one little inky-dinky brown thing falls on his head. He says, then the ground shakes from below him, and everyone in the school feels the shock wave. He goes, and everyone in class 1A gets sent back. They go, even Aizawa. Bakugo is even scared of this. He says, oh shoot, I'm dead. He's dead. He goes and grabs the Deku and slams him, splatting him. He goes, but then he forms back together and then he says, get back here, you little runt. He runs up to him going, chasing him around the school, going, get back here. Nezu sees this and grabs him, and grabs the little Deku saying, what's going on here? He says, that little was twerking in front of me, also pooped on my head. He says, I'm gonna kill him. He says, he's a weird person and shouldn't exist. I'm gonna murder him right now. He says, I will not allow you to do that. Then he disappears and grabs the little Deku and slams his head, popping him like a grape. Then he says, you will be hereby, and then he forms back together and says, you are no longer expelled. Then he punches him, saying, get the hell back here, you little runt. And chasing him for hours, because Schrader gives him and the little Deku infinite energy, and the little Deku's running like a squirrel. He's like, I gotta get away, he's gonna kill me, why the hell didn't I do that? I wish that Todoroki was here. Then a portal opens and a Todoroki and Bakugo come and say, you're not hurting my boyfriend. He says, you're gonna get out of my way, or I'm gonna kill you both. Bakugo gets his explosions ready, and the fakes get their powers ready. Christian says, Ice Beam, and freezes them and kicks it through, erasing both of them. He says, get the hell out of my way. Then he rushes after the little thing, grabbing its tail. He whimpers like it's a real tail, but it's not. He says, you little brat. Then he grabs his head and rams it against the lockers. Monoma says, oh, hell yeah, I'm joining in on this. He grabs the other side of his head and they both slam it against the locker, going, Kenma blocks her, asking that she can't see them torture this poor thing. When Christian hears this, he runs over to Kenma and flicks her in the head, saying, do you say that poor thing? She says, yes, it's innocent. With tears in her eyes, that thing, shit on my head, sent Todoroki a love letter, also twerked in front of my fucking face, slept with me, everything. This thing is weird. It's the soft version of Deku, and I'm gonna kill it. She wipes her tears and says, go kill it, now. Class 1B, get it. Christian whistles and says, Class 1A, attack! They all rush out going, brrr. They say, this is America. Then they all go, ah! Then the whole school is chasing this Deku. Then they all get him cornered, and then he climbs up somehow like a squirrel, but Christian grabs him and throws him. Kenma creates a giant fist and punches him. He goes, I've never felt so much torture in my life. Is this what it's like being in this world? Christian says, then he cuts him with a knife. Then he goes and shoots him with the gun in the head, going boom. He says, then Tetsu says, why are we doing this to this thing? He says, Kendo says, it pooped on his head, twerked in front of him, sent Todoroki a love letter, and slept with him. On purpose. He says, yep, beat him up. He actually has to steal and punches it so hard that he breaks its skull. He says, even if he's a perv, this is still a kind of abuse. We shouldn't do this. Vlad says. Eraser says, you're stupid, Vlad. Just never talk to me. He says, what, Eraser, what'll I do? He says, I'm just trying to defend that poor thing. He says, poor thing. Poor thing. He says, what did he do to make you guys hate him so much? He says, the fact that he twerked in front of one of my students in his face. That thing is so small that it was right in his face. Then pooped on him, ran away, slept with him, and made his life a misery. He literally wants to kill him, and so do I. He goes, Eraser, I am going to agree with you now. This thing should be extinguished. Instantly. Christian says, we're growing in followers. And says, then they're chasing him for hours on hours until it hits the 24-hour mark. Christian says, "Time to die, little guy." Creator says, "I'm gonna make him suffer 1,000 deaths. But it'll pay the price. If you kill him, you'll suffer much worse pain than he does." Christian says, "As long as I get to kill this thing, I don't care." He creates an ice blade and cuts its head off, then slices it 1,000,000 times, then blasts it. He said, Bakugo yells and says, What did you get to kill?" He said, Christian says, "I've been through the most I have been through the worst of it all. Y'all got it easy." And you know what he did? He slept with me. He pooped on me. He twerked in front of me. He fucking twerked in front of... Then he says, "Anything else?" He says, then he goes and says, and then he goes... He's laughing and says, "That's all." Then he's about to laugh one more time, but then blood comes from all over him. The whole entire Hero Corps said they're shocked. They're just kind of scared. Then he goes, they're kind of scared of what the hell just happened to him. He goes, and he's bleeding on the ground, dead almost. He says, "I told you you'd pay for the price for killing him." He says, "I'll heal you up." Then he heals him and says, "I feel so much better."